Hello, fiber friends. I'm thrilled that you are joining me today for the second episode of the Jillian Eve podcast, where I talk about spinning yarn, using yarn, textile history, sustainable fashion, fiber art community, and more. I'm your host, Evie. Welcome. I'm so glad you are joining me. This episode is going to be focused on clothing sustainability. We're going to talk about mending and find some inspiration. I also have a very special guest here to talk to us about Darn Tough Vermont socks, because I have a thing about socks. So you know the drill. Grab your current work in progress, grab a drink, maybe a snack if you're hungry, and a furry friend if you have one nearby to keep you company. And let's podcast on. We know that in the past, people would often reuse fabric and prioritize mending. It was a common practice to mend and repair garments, ensuring their longevity and reducing waste. Eventually, worn-out clothing would be transformed into maybe quilts or repurposed as smaller items like handkerchiefs or rags. I actually have a baby quilt that belonged to Mark's father, and you can see this quilt was probably, from family history we can figure, was probably made in the 1920s or 30s, and you can see that it is all patched together with pieces of cloth that would be even older than the time that the quilt itself was made. Isn't that an incredible little family heirloom? It definitely is for a textile nerd like me. I remember having some patches when I was a little girl in the 1980s, and I think I had some iron-on patches that never really stayed on, but I remember them kind of like stickers, but for clothing. And then when I was in high school, I had a summer job working at a uniform company where I got to, one of the things I did there was pull the interfacing, like the backing that held it together while the machines did the stitching. I would pull that off of the patches when they came off of the embroidery machines and got cut apart and ready to go on the uniforms. Some of the patches were actually pretty interesting, like we would get some for local fire departments and things like that, but most of them were kind of very boring logos for companies and like a lot of patches of people's first names. Anyway, I was in high school. I didn't appreciate things like I do now. I would like to go back there and see those embroidery machines if I had a chance, because that would actually be pretty cool. But embroidered patches, woven patches, applique patches, I just got curious and wanted to know more about patches. So it turns out that patches have a long-standing legacy that stretches back for centuries. And that's just as far back as we have extant examples to look at for evidence. But I would probably guess that as long as there has been cloth, people were doing patchwork in some form or another. Before industrialization, cloth was just so laborious. No one would want to waste it. But patches have meant different things at different times. In ancient times, as far back as the 3rd century BC, patches served a practical purpose in military uniforms, and they could be used to mend tears or reinforce garments. But as history unfolded, the use of patches to show, some sort of military rank or identify a person in some type of uniform, that pretty much stayed the same. But patches in terms of visible mending became more of a signifier of social status and class. According to an article in Sleek magazine, a patch has always been shorthand for poor. In the 3rd century BC, Senator Cato recommended that agricultural slaves spend rainy days when they couldn't work in the fields stitching patches to repair their clothing. Later on, a patch was the sartorial synonym for humiliation. In Tudor England, it was also another name one who would wear the shabbiest of clothing. Patches are used to show the epitome of despair and hopelessness in Dickens's novels. Likewise, in Hemingway's Farewell to Arms, clothes are symbolically patched and torn to represent Europe itself being patched and torn through war. Throughout much of history, the patch was nothing more than a nifty way for resourceful housewives to give clothes a few more years of wear. I think of my papa having sweaters with leather patches on the elbows. That's like the grandpa aesthetic, right? But then, enter the hippies of the 1960s, who fashionably wore patchwork clothing and perhaps paved the way for the rebellious punk movement of the 1970s and 1980s, all of which very much challenged societal norms and embraced patches as powerful means of self-expression. Punks boldly stitched patches onto their jackets, transforming them into vibrant canvases that communicated messages of social and political rebellion. In this countercultural context, patched clothing regained its significance as a symbol of resistance and individuality, which broke it free from the class associations of the past. And now, fast forward to today, patches are no longer confined to denim jackets or the knees on your jeans. Patches now adorn a variety of garments. And although I personally find it weird and kind of disrespectful, I think, to take brand new clothing and then purposely tear it and then patch it for the fashion. The best holy jeans are the ones you wear out yourself, right? We all know that, don't we? But I do think there is good coming from the movement of visible mending. It celebrates the act of repairing and embellishing garments and using patches and beautiful stitches and other innovative techniques. So maybe I'm just a little punk at heart, and I think that torn clothing should be earned and authentic and DIY. With trendy patches in mind, I went thrifting to see if I could find something that needed mending. Most thrift stores around me are somewhat curated, and things with major holes or needing really obvious repair don't make it to the rack. So I wanted to find something that I could rescue, that maybe made it past inspection but might languish on the rack without a little TLC. I found what I was looking for when I found a shirt from Shein at my local thrift shop. If you're unfamiliar with all of the ethical problems surrounding Shein, I encourage you to go to watch a deep dive video, YouTube documentary that Swoop did on her channel. I'll link it down below. She did amazing research and it's well worth the watch. Personally, I'm never going to buy directly from Shein. I have lots of thrift store options near me, and I make my own clothes, like this dress that I have here. This is the Woolfolk pattern by Jacqueline Cieslik. I made this out of linen. I love it. It's such a great dress to layer. So I have the ability to make that choice, and I just want to say that everyone's needs and circumstances are different. So I don't judge. I can only share my own experience and choices, but it's really clear that lots of people are buying lots of clothes, and when people have clothes that they don't want, maybe it didn't fit, maybe it wasn't the right color or what they expected or whatever, people donate their clothing to thrift stores where people like me pick them up. So while I won't personally purchase directly from Shein, I do have Shein brand clothing in my closet, and that is the reason why. And as a side note though, size inclusivity is one area that Shein does really well. So it would be nice if some more sustainable brands would take some notes on that. Just mentioning it. So this shirt, I'm not sure what to call it. It's supposed to look like a layered shirt. It kind of looks more like a ruffle. But I don't mind. I think it's fun. However, it has a few snags that need to be mended because I imagine without some attention, they will either ladder down or grow a hole over time. And remember, a stitch in time saves 9. Never knew what 9 meant. It means 9 stitches. It means if you stitch it now, you have less mending to do later. Now it makes sense. So this is my project for this episode. I'm using some hand spun yarn to weave patches over these snagged spots so that I can be fashionably, visibly mended. And now we know, also kind of a little bit punk. I'll show you the finished look later in this episode. I also want to show you 2 other thrifted finds that I came across. I discovered a vintage gem called the McCall's Needlework Treasury, a learn and make book. So I want to make some things from this, maybe for a future episode. It smells so good. It smells like old paper and ink. This book has all kinds of embroidery tutorials in it, and I was delighted to find a section on bobbin lace in here. Good for you, McCalls. Let's do all the needlework, even lace. My other find was this ball of novelty yarn. It's sparkly green and it has sequins in it. It's from Premier and I paid $2 for it. It still has the band, and as far as I can tell, it has all 429 yards still in this. It's not really a skein or a ball. I don't know. It's more like thread than yarn. But I think it will be perfect for a thread ply yarn. What do you think? What should I do with this? I think this will happen in the near future. Maybe I'll make a tutorial of a thread ply with this. It sparkled. I couldn't help myself. In this episode, we have a special guest joining us. It's all well and good to talk about thrifting and mending and holding fast fashion companies accountable, but I also want to shine a spotlight on companies that are doing things right, companies that we can support, and maybe where it might be a little bit more affordable to support. So let's welcome today's special guest, Jessy, who is a member of my Patreon and who is a technician who works for Vermont Tough Socks. Jessy, thank you so much for joining me on the channel. I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us what it is that you do.
Hey, everyone. My name is Jessy, and I work as a level 1 technician in a sock factory called Darn Tough. So I just want to clarify, while I am an employee at Darn Tough, I'm not an official representative of Darn Tough, so there just may be questions that I don't know the answer to or that I can't answer.
Sounds good. I don't want you to jeopardize any of your trade secrets. What are some of the types of socks that Darn Tough makes and provides?
We make socks for hiking, for hunting, for working, for lifestyle, just every day walking around. And if you're in the military, we also make your socks. I have family members who have been deployed, and they always make sure to get Darn Tough socks because those are the best quality socks that they will get while they're in the military. And we're very proud of that.
I have a surprise for you, Jessy.
Yay!
I ordered some socks and I didn't tell anybody that I would be ordering socks. And I think we ordered them under Mark's name, so it would be even extra sneakier. So I'm going to open them up. So we have, what's first? I am a sucker for owls.
Yes.
I freaked out when I saw these.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, many of the newer designs are just Absolutely adorable. And they know what they're doing. They know how to appeal to people.
So I need to know, this is all color work in there.
Oh, yeah. 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 It's
It's
all color
not
work.
it's not like printed or stamped on there. These are the colors of the yarn.
Nope.
It's actual color work. So
once in the machine, it goes around and it lowers different fingers at different times, and the fingers are what direct the yarn into the machine. Yeah.
So cool. All right. So what else do I have in here? Those are obviously for me. Oh, yes. There
I
were
have
so many.
too.
There were so many. I couldn't choose. And I think I limited myself to 2. I got the owls and the foxes. So I'm happy with those. These are for Mark because
Yes.
I can't knit socks fast enough. He wants more. And it took me like 2 years to make him socks. He has big feet, but like, I really don't have better excuses. This pair is more like a regular, like a daily with shoes to the office kind of sock. And then this is more like something you'd wear with boots, like for hiking or, it says hike. Look at that.
Yep.
So do you use different yarns for different weights of sock like we would if we're knitting, or do you by hand, or do you change your gauge on the machines? Are they capable of that?
Well, what we typically do is we do have different weights for different style socks, but what is more important is if it has terry or not. This is an example of terry where it makes the little loops on the inside. These are mountaineer socks, and it has terry all throughout the sock. So some of the socks, we only have terry like just in the little foot area. So you can see it's a little bit thinner on this area, and then it's a little bit thicker here.
That looks like it would be super cozy and comfy.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. So what is it like working at a sock factory?
It's a lot of fun. Let me show you a few pictures of like what I'm doing with every day.
I would love to see it. Wow.
Yeah.
Rows of combs.
I know, it's an absolute knitter's dream in there.
How different are the machines that you are working with from the sock knitting machines, like the hand cranked sock knitting machines of the 1800s?
Well, first of all, I can lift a hand cranked machine without hurting myself, seriously. Yeah, the machines that I work with every day, they're taller than me. And they weigh at least a ton, I think, to be honest. They're huge. And they're definitely more complex. They have more parts that are moving, more parts that can break, more delicate parts.
Give us some of the most fascinating and interesting info about these amazing sock machines.
Well, let's start with the creels. You have 2 pictures that are different aisles. One has a bunch of the machines from the front, and the other has basically what you're going to see at the back of the machines, because we have multiple aisles that have machines on them. And the front of the machine is the machine. The back of the machine is the creel. And those will have tubes that go to the front of the machine and deposit the yarn in from the top through something called the spider. And all those yarns go through sensors that detect if they're running, or if they're running when they're not supposed to be running, or if they're breaking, or if something's going on.
So if the yarn has a knot in it, I'm asking, thinking of all the times that I've been working through a skein and there's a knot in the middle. Is that something that happens with these cones when you get them in?
Sometimes, yeah. And we have to tie them off on the back all the time just to make sure that when one cone runs out, the other one is just there to run in right after it.
So these sensors would pick up like if there's a flaw in the yarn, or if it's broken, or it's not working right, whatever's going on with it.
They will sense it if it's not working right. But the only time that the having a knot in the yarn, or maybe a slub in the yarn, or some lint that's getting pulled through, will affect it is, first of all, if the lint builds up and breaks the yarn. And second of all, if it's in the seamer area, because the holes where the thread goes through are really tiny. So the knot will push against that hole and then break.
Can you tell us a story about something wild that's happened with some of these machines?
You see the pink sock that is kind of like trying to come out of the machine, but not quite able to make it. That center part is what we call the dial. There are many things in just that part alone that contribute to the sock being made properly. What those things do is they have these little bits that come out at the beginning, and they catch what we call the makeup to kind of make that little cuff at the beginning of the sock. They catch that thread, and then they put it back into the sock to fold the sock over when it's being made. So the thing is, sometimes they don't detach from the dial and they get caught. And what can happen is those pictures that I show you here where, yeah, it's caught not only on the dial, it's also caught on a bunch of needles that are broken.
Oh.
And what those breaks create is that ripping right throughout the sock on the foot there you see, and where the sock is laying on the lid right now. That happened my first week of training to be a technician.
So that was a good learning opportunity for you.
Many learning opportunities tend to happen around me. It's a little humorous.
So what would you say is something that's really rewarding about working as a technician?
Another thing that I really do enjoy doing is, so the main machine makes a sock, and then I will send you a video where it, and in that video, it shows the sock being taken from the machine into another area to the right of the machine that we call the seaming area. And it just does the toe all together, and that's where you need to also watch that you don't have any knots in the yarn. But say you have a sock like this, it goes up to my knees. It's our mountaineering sock, by the way, but it goes up to my knees, and it's even longer when it comes out of the machine. It's like at least twice as long as this because it's not been washed or anything. It's not been steamed, it's not been blocked, but that's the raw material. And if you have something wrong with the steamer where there's like dropping a stitch or something, then you don't want to waste all this material. So we have a setting on the machine that does this. It goes through every step of the sock, but it reduces the amount of times that it does those areas. So this is the actual heel. But that's one of the ways that we reduce waste, and we can check and go, okay, the toe steamer was working that time. I finally fixed it.
I love that you have, of course you don't want waste to, that's a whole sock. You don't want to lose a whole sock. That's really awesome. You mentioned the Knit to Give program as something that you're really excited about. Can you tell us more about that?
About, I want to say a year after I started working there in 2018, they came out with a sock design. And this was the sock design that they came out with. It has different fruits and vegetables on it, and it even has a rabbit on the other side. You'll see right above the Darn Tough label is VTFB, and that stands for the Vermont Food Bank. And what we do is that 100% of the cost that went into buying these socks by the customers went towards a food bank. And every year we come out with another design. I think this was the one that we had last year. Oh, yeah, this is the one we had the second year that we did that. And I have to apologize. I have worn this sock and washed it, but this sock that I've been holding up a few times, this is the one that we did this past year. And this year it's exciting because we actually have 2 new socks coming out, and the designs for those socks were actually drawn by fellow people in the knitting room at the factory, not the people who are hired to design the socks officially.
Just you and your coworkers, everybody, you've all put a lot of your heart into the designs and into all of it. That's so wonderful.
Jessy, this is just absolutely the coolest thing to see all these machines and the behind the scenes. I love that if, for me personally, knitting socks isn't my own favorite thing to do, that I have an option where I can get some ethical, a good company that's giving back to the community and treating its workers right. All of that. I love that I can support you with that. When I buy socks at the store, they wear out real fast, and that's so frustrating. So I would love to know about your socks. What is like the oldest sock that you have that's still going strong?
You're not going to believe me, but I have yet to have a single pair of Darn Tough socks wear out. Now, part of that is because I have so many pairs, but at the same time, they hold up. I used to work in the warranties department, and people would send in socks saying, oh, I hiked every day in these for 6 months and I finally wore them out. And people saying, I've had these for like almost a decade and I finally wore a hole in them. But yeah.
They're really tough. Is it hard to choose a favorite?
It is hard to choose a favorite, but I think my current favorite has got to be these little guys.
Yes. They're adorable.
Yes. Yeah, it's fun to watch these socks being made, although it is a bit of a pain if they break, because this machine is a little bit fussier. It's a special machine that makes different stripes in the heel and toe. It's difficult enough when you have to just do one color and the heel or toe. But when you have like multiple colors and you have to have them going at the right time, and it's a bit of a contraption to get that going. Because they have to kind of like put the line down. Yeah, anyone who's ever knit color work knows exactly what this is doing.
Yes, I do. As soon as you held it up, I was like, wow, yes, I get it.
It's passing the color along.
Well, yeah. They are absolutely adorable. Jessy, thank you so much for just sharing all of your behind the scenes and this awesome company. So should people go to the website if they want to purchase some socks?
Definitely. You won't regret it. You'll be getting a good pair of socks. It's a good company.
Jessy, thank you so much for being here. Now it's time to mend and repair this sweater. I'm going to use the Katrinkles darning loom, which I do sell in my shop. I have the large and small looms so you can mend sweaters or socks or anything in between. I'm going to use the large loom for this project, and stay tuned because I might be having a little giveaway in just a moment. I want to use a hand spun yarn that won't shrink when I wash this sweater, and that could make the fabric pucker in a weird way. So I'm going to use a superwash bamboo blend I got from Knit Spin on Etsy. I think the colors are just perfect to go with this brown and sort of a little creamy white of the sweater. I've balled up some yarn to work from, and I'll start this first patch by securing the fabric to the loom, selecting the right heddle size for the yarn, and stitching down my warp threads. Next, I'll work my way up. Simple over-unders will do, and I'll tack down the weft at the end of each pass. After my patch is woven as far as I can go, I'll remove the heddle and do a final row to tack down the loops of warp, and there it is, my fashionable new patched sweater. There are a million different ideas I'm having for this little loom. I think if you got creative, you could find ways to sew patches without it, but it makes a very satisfying and quick little project. What do you think? Have you tried the Katrinkles loom or a similar loom like the one that's on the cover of Spinoff? Let me know all about it in the comments down below, and that is going to be the giveaway for this podcast episode. I have one large size darning loom from Katrinkles that I will pick a random comment. All you have to do is leave a comment, and you can win a darning loom. There's more details about the giveaway down in the video description, so you can go check that out. And good luck, everyone. I would love to hear what you think about visible mending or any other comment that you want to leave me. Here is my finished, patched shirt. What do you think? I needed somewhere to put my mic, and so I stuck it on a spindle. That's what this contraption is. But the shirt, what do you think? I think it's better, honestly. I like it better. It has a little flair now. It's like having a statement necklace and having like a big bead or piece of jewelry. Like, that's what it feels like to me. I don't know if that's what it looks like, but I like it. So I'm going to wear it like this because, yeah, I'm thrilled with this, honestly. And the little ruffle thing is, it's a little swishy. It's kind of cute. The story time for today is about the time that I accidentally found a yarn show when I was on a date with Mark. True. This happened like a month ago. So we drove up to Milwaukee to go to the Oddities and Curiosities Expo, which was tons of fun. We got some really weird art and I love it so much. And when we were there, it's a really big conference center in Milwaukee. It's like multiple floors and it's massive. So we were going up the escalator to get to the expo, and there was a sign there that said makers something or other, and all I saw was the big word yarn on there, and I was like, what? Yarn? First floor? We were on the third floor or something. And Mark looked at me and he was like, do you need to go check it out? And I was like, no, we're here to do, something not related to my YouTube channel for a change. But anyway, at the end of the time that we were there, we enjoyed the expo for Oddities and Curiosities. Like I said, it was a lot of fun. But on our way out, we went down and we did check out what was happening with the big sign that said yarn. It turned out we had accidentally stumbled into a maker festival that was being put on by Interweave. And it said Yarn Fest, Bead Fest, Stitch Fest. So we went down there and walked around and checked it out. It was a lot of fun. And one of the booths that I went by here was called Nitty Gritty, and they have a story about their inspiration and what they do, and they also donate a handmade baby hat for every 5 skeins of yarn that they sell. So I thought that was pretty neat, and I wanted to get some skeins of yarn because of course I did. So I got a kit that they had for a beautiful little colorwork hat. And this is my finished object for today. So we have a story time that led to a finished object, but I don't know how many people actually could ever just go on a date and accidentally find themselves in a yarn festival. That doesn't happen. Anyway, this is a child-size hat and that I made, and so I will be donating it to make sure it goes to a child who needs a warm hat for this winter. It's wool, but it is super wash, so if it gets washed, it should be okay if someone doesn't know wool. I always worry about donating 100% wool and then having someone felt it and not knowing, how that could easily happen. So anyway, isn't the color work really beautiful? I will have, of course, all of the links and resources and things in the description down below if you want to find the kit or pattern for this hat, as well as learning more about the Maker Festival from Interweave. I didn't know that was going on, but I'll definitely be checking out next year's and maybe hit that expo as well for Oddities and Curiosities because I like weird stuff. Part of of the reason I wanted to include a podcast style video like this each month is because I get so many spinner questions and I don't always have time to answer them. And so I wanted to have a way that I could just give you all a place to ask me questions and I can give you my opinions on things, my thoughts on things. I am going to go to last month's podcast episode and scroll through the comment section, see who asked a question, and see if I can answer it for you, or at least give you my thoughts. The first question comes from a viewer named Gail, and Gail wants to know, how do you find the makers of the fascinating spindles you share on your videos? Gail, I have so much fun searching for spindle makers. There are a couple places that I look. Number one is Etsy. There are quite a few makers who are on Etsy. The other place that I look is on Instagram. If you follow the hashtag for spindles, you will, oh my goodness, you will be overwhelmed with beauty and getting to see so many people doing different things with their spindles, spinning different breeds of wool and just sharing their projects. It's amazing. And a lot of times you'll be able to see really cool spindles there and ask people where they got them from. And then the third way is by going to fiber festivals. I go to the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival and meet up with some spindle makers there, most notably Robin from Dancing Goats, and Snyder Spindles is also nearby me, and they go to that one. So if you go to your local fiber festivals, the big ones bring people from all around the country, maybe your region, but you can also find some local people at some of the smaller festivals as well. And check if you have any local spinning supply stores, you know, like real specialty local yarn stores. They might be in touch with some local makers as well. So those are some ideas. If you are interested in looking for the Etsy people, I do have an affiliate link for Etsy. That doesn't come out of the shop. That comes from Etsy, where I get a commission if you make a purchase there. So I have a link for that in my video description. It's a way to support the channel. So I'll always disclose if those are sponsored or affiliates or whatever. So now you know about that. Oh, and speaking of the dancing goats, Stitch with Britt said, I have a few questions. I got some supported spindles from the dancing goats a while ago, but don't know how to use them properly and would very much appreciate a demonstration on how to get the fiber on it and start spinning it. Or maybe it's just me because I have trouble with a drop spindle too. My fiber keeps slipping off the leader yarn and drops to the floor. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thanks for your question, Stitch with Britt. This is a question that honestly could get its own entire video, and I might do that in the future. But in the meantime, I will do just a quick sort of demonstration here. And this isn't a supported spindle, but it's a large spindle, so I can kind of give you an idea. When I am spinning supported, I want the yarn to just kind of flick around the tip, and you can see it kind of bouncing off there, and that is what is putting the twist from the turning of the stick into the yarn itself. So as I spin, you'll see it kind of flicks off of the tip of that, and so it's kind of a matter of finding a good balance between the angle of the yarn as you're drafting it off. But one thing that you can do if you're struggling and learning how to use a supported spindle is to do sort of essentially what would be like a park and draft method, where if you have a suspended spindle, a lot of times people will say, add the twist and then hold it between your legs or something and then do your drafting and let that twist move into the yarn. And then add more twist and draft. So you can do the same thing with a supported spindle. You can add a bunch of twist and then hold on to it, do your drafting, you know, and then add a bunch more twist, hold on to it and do your drafting. And that kind of gets you sort of in the motions, you getting used to the way it's adding twist and how it feels to turn it and still be making some yarn. So I think that's a good first step, is to do that kind of park and draft. I would say twist and stop or twist then draft. And you can get into the more advanced things like simultaneously adding twist and drafting while it's still spinning around kind of in the cup of your hand. Those are a little bit more advanced. So that's something to aspire to, but if you're just starting with supported spindles, just take it easy on yourself. Add some twist, do some drafting, and just go nice and slow and really enjoy the process. I love supported spindles. They're so much fun. It's a very mindful spin. The next question comes from Still a Robin, and the question is, I love a good woolen spin and have started looking at drum carders to be able to do more than my hand cards and physical body will allow. I understand that. But I am afraid of limiting myself with the carding cloth options. I like working with fine wool and blending from indie dyed top, but I also really enjoy down and primitive fleeces. I want to make sure I won't ruin any of these lovely fibers, but it is quite the investment, and I know I might not be able to service all my needs, or will I? I'm struggling to find guidance on this question. Thank you. Still a Robin. I think this is a really good question, and it applies to more than just drum carders. There is so much spinning equipment that is expensive and a real investment, especially when you haven't done the technique yet or tried it yet and you don't know for sure if you're going to like it. I have a Brother drum carder, and if you go through Brother, you can get different drums with the different sizes of carding cloth on them, and you can swap them out on the same carding machine. That's kind of what you could do if you want to have all the options, is find a way to have a base and then swap out the drums. I have two drum carders. I have a 90 TPI and I have a 72 TPI. The 72 is really open, and I use that when I want a lot of texture, like a lot of texture. So if you do enjoy fine wools, I would say that the 72 would probably be too loose for you. The 90 I use for fine wools, and some of the more toothier medium wools are just fine on that 90 TPI. And you can always do an extra pass to open things up even more. Start with 90, see if you want something more open or finer like a 120, and see where you can sort of like plan your equipment purchases and your equipment growth as you go. I think that's kind of a wise way to think of it. Another thing to consider is that a lot of fiber processing equipment really holds its value. And so if you do use it and find that it's not fitting your needs and what you want to spin and card up, you can sell it. A lot of it will fetch a really close price to what you purchased it for. So there's a little bit less of a risk in the investment because of that. So that's always something to consider that maybe takes a little pressure off if that also helps. Let's see, who else has questions? Rachael has a great question. Rachael says, what tips do you have for spinning in a small space? Storage tips, space saving or multi-use equipment, etc. I live in a very small college apartment and don't know if I have enough room to buy a wheel or have a good fiber stash. Oh boy. So if space is the number one thing you're concerned about, you can buy prepared fiber like these beautiful comb tops or carded bats you can buy already ready to go for spinning. And then you can get maybe an e-spinner, which has a very small kind of footprint, or spindle. Spindles are real small and they pack away easily. I mean, they practically fit in a pencil jar, so they don't take a ton of space. There's so much of this that we could do by hand that I think it's sort of just our mindset of purchasing all the things to be good at the craft. You don't need all the things to be good at spinning or to enjoy spinning. If I was going to start with nothing and go very basic, I would do spindles, a nitty naughty, maybe a yarn swift, or or a guarantee that I could have a person to hold the skein open for me while I ball it up. And that's really all you need. And you can get beautiful yarn from that, and you can do sweater quantities of yarn. It just takes the investment of time. And our last question for today, ArcherMoon says, as a new spinner on a spindle, I don't have the resources to get a spinning wheel yet. I struggle with drafting to achieve a consistent yarn. Most of the spinning wheel videos I have found just kind of say draft out some fiber, and they make it look so simple. I'm not finding it as simple as the videos make it look. Can you go into more detail on how to draft and troubleshoot common problems new spinners face when drafting? This is a great question, and again, I think it's time for me to do maybe another couple spindle videos. They are coming. They are on my list. I am convinced. I do have a video about getting consistent singles, and I'll put a link to that video down below. In that video, I am spinning with a spinning wheel, but the same mechanics apply when spinning with a spindle. We are still working with twist being added and drafting or attenuating those fibers apart. One of the main things that beginners find frustrating is that they feel like their fiber just isn't drafting. I don't have fiber nearby. Yes, I do. I always have fiber nearby. So one of the main things that beginners struggle with is they feel that their fiber just isn't drafting, right? Like drafting, sliding out. There are two main reasons for this. One reason is that you are holding both ends of the lock. When you hold both ends of the staple, it's never going to draft. So what you have to do is you're going to have to get real loose with one hand so that the fibers can slide past. And so I'm holding on to it just so that it doesn't all come out of my hand, but I'm not clamped down, so I'm able to just kind of slide a few out at a time. And then as the twist enters there, now I have yarn. One of the other issues, the second issue that is a big issue people run into, is that their twist gets into the fiber supply. So when your twist runs into here, suddenly now, even if you're holding on to it, it's pulling out big lumps, and that twist is glue. And so once that twist gets into that fiber supply, it can really bind up those fibers. And so something that you can do while you're spinning, if you find that is your problem, is you can roll with your fingers to undo a little bit of that twist so that it'll start to draft out again. You just need to release a little glue, and then you'll find it much easier to draft. So I hope those two tips get you started, and there will be some spindle videos coming up very soon. If I didn't get to your question today, go ahead and ask again, or ask a new fresh question in the comments of this episode. Put capitals question and it'll help me spot it, and then go ahead and ask your question, and I will do another Q&A segment in the next podcast, probably at the end of next month. Well, friends, that's all the time I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Jillian Eve podcast. Subscribe for future episodes where we will continue to explore spinning yarn, textile history, sustainable fashion, and more. And until then, keep those spinning wheels spinning, those needles clicking, and happy crafting, fiber friends.